Hello everyone, it's Shannon for Waffle Flower Crafts. Today I'm using the new Plaid Play Stamp Set. This just came out in our fall release, a really awesome set. I'm going to also be using these dies, the flower circle die on the right, and in the left was the good luck word die. To finish off my sentiments, I'll be using these stamp sets. On the right is Big Day today, or I'm sorry, Big Day, and then on the left is Happy Day. I'm going to stamp some chevrons today. I'm going to use an A2 panel. I'm going to cut it in half. So I have two 5.5 by 2 1/8 panels. Or half of a panel, I should say. 2 halves. I'm pulling off the largest solid striped stamp from the Plaid Play Stamp Set. I'm going to be using these Waffle Flower inks today. I'm going to use the triangle, which is from the Misty Creative Corner set. It is going to help me angle my stamp and always have my stamp at a perfect, I believe it's 45-degree angle. It's not labeled, but I believe that's a 45-degree angle. I have my triangle, the right side of it pushed up against the right side of my Misty to make sure that that angle is perfect, and then I use that to help angle that stamp. Now I'm going to take this half of the panel, and I'm now have it butted up, the base of the panel lined up with the bottom of the Misty, and I'm lining up the panel right now as close as I can get to the edge of the left side of that stamp, and that is going to be my first stripe that I stamp. So I'm going to be stamping stripes, diagonal stripes, on both halves, and they will create a chevron. The first color I'm using is a Waffle Flower dye ink. It's called Happy Go Lucky. It's a beautiful purple pink kind of color. Really like it. And I will be stamping this a couple times because this is a very solid stamp, and these tend to be can be blotchy. So I'm going to stamp it just a couple times just to make sure it's nice and solid. And now that I've stamped it, I'm going to take my panel off, or my half off, and then I'm going to clean off my Misty. I'm going to be doing this after every time I stamp, just to make sure I don't get any ink anywhere I don't want it. And I sometimes will clean off my magnets too, just in case I've got some ink on my magnets as well. And then I will dry to remove any moisture so I don't get my paper wet. So now that it's all clean, I'm ready to do my next stripe. So now I've moved my panel slightly towards the right, and now I'm going to line my panel up for the next stripe, and the next stripe is going to be, I'm looking through that stamp and trying to see just a slight bit of that purple, the edge of that purple stripe that I've already stamped through the stamp, and then I know it's all lined up, and I will stamp the adjacent stripe. So I'm going to use another Waffle Flower ink. This is called My Pleasure. It's a beautiful, like, corally red, really, really pretty. And again, I'm stamping it a couple times just to make sure it's nice and solid. And I will continue this process where I stamp, then clean, and then slide my paper down towards the right until I can get as many stripes as I can stamped without moving that stamp. I really prefer positioning it this way, by moving it along the bottom of my Misty, always lining that base of the cardstock up with the bottom of the Misty, as opposed to moving that stamp every time. I find that a lot more tedious. I find this will be the best method for stamping this series of stripes over and over again. And I just did the same process again, looked through that stamp to see the little bit of the red, and then stamped my next color, which was that yellow-orange, which is called Oh Happy Day. Now I flipped my panel over because I got as many stripes as I could on that half. Now I flipped it over, and now I'm trying to stamp the bottom half, which is now up at the top. And I can get one more stripe now. So now I'm doing a stripe next to that purple color. And this next color will be one of my most favorite Waffle Flower ink colors. It's called Peace of Mind. It's a beautiful, like, dark aqua or blue green, really pretty. And again, I stamped that a couple times just to make sure it's nice and dark, but I cut that out so you don't have to see me stamping multiple times. Okay, so now I'm showing you here I can't get any more stripes. So I can't get any more stripes now, or complete stripes, on that half either. So now I do have to finally reposition this stripe stamp. So again, I'm using that corner from the Creative Corners. I believe it's the smaller triangle in the set. You get two. I'm moving it up here, and I'm kind of using my panel to kind of help guide. Okay, so I know that I need to move it up a little higher to get, and now I'm going to start again towards the left, and then I'll move my little paper more and more towards the right, and this is only because this stripe is going high on the right and low on the left. Cleaning it off here, or I've already cleaned it, but I'm rubbing my hand over the top, because if you get some of your oils from your hands, it helps the ink to stick to the stamp better, and you have better stamped image. And I'm just continuing my pattern. I used 5 colors in total, and I'm just continuing the same sequence every time. You just have to be mindful of when you flip over and what 2 colors go adjacent to another. So that's just the only thing. See, now I flipped it over. I can't stamp any more stripes on that half, so now I'm going to flip it over on the other side and stamp, I believe, like 3 more stripes on this side. So this is I'm doing it right next to the yellow, so I will now do the New Fish and Pond, which is a beautiful blue color, aqua color. Ink that up, and that's the only color I haven't mentioned. I believe I've used the aqua, which is New Fish and Pond, the yellow, orange, which is Oh Happy Day, the red, which is My Pleasure, the purple, which is Happy Go Lucky, and then the aqua, dark aqua, which is Peace of Mind. So now I've stamped almost the whole thing. I have 2 little corners, which unfortunately I didn't quite get with that position of the stamp, so I have to reposition it one more time. So I've positioned it 3 times total, but that's all I've done. I've only positioned it 3 times total, and I've got, I don't even know how many stripes, like 8 or 9. And if you were positioning your stamp, every time you'd have to move that stamp 8 or 9 times. So that's a lot of repositioning your stamp. So I do really like this method of positioning it and then sliding your paper down to create more and more stripes. Okay, so now I'm ready to stamp the other half. I finished off those 2 little corners. I'm using the triangle from the Creative Corners to help me make sure that stripe is always at the exact same angle. This is really important because I want those stripes to line up in the end. What I'm working on right now is lining up that stamp just by sliding the triangle along the bottom with the stamp adjacent to it. That helps me to line it up perfectly to that red stripe. I'm going for that red stripe there. I always do it in the middle. And now I've got that stamp perfectly angled at that 45-degree angle, and I also have it lined up for that red stripe. And again, this is really important because I want these stripes to match up, so I have that V, that chevron look. So I will now ink this up in that red, which is My Pleasure. And I'm just double checking, triple checking. This is the most important one, because once I've lined up this stamp, I can line up all the other stripes according to this stripe. And again, stamping it a couple times just to make sure it's nice and solid. And also it matches the intensity of the other half, which I did stamp multiple times. And so that stripe is done. And now I'm just going to continue the process. I will be sliding this though towards the left this time because that's the angle my stamp is going. It's high on the left now and lower on the right. But that's the only difference. It's just the angle now of the stamp is, flipped the other direction. Still 45-degree angle, just flipped the other way. And now I'm lining it up again, lining that paper up on the bottom, looking through so it's perfectly adjacent the next stripe. So now I have both halves done. I'm going to adhere them now onto an A2 panel of white cardstock. This is 65 weight. Also the 2 halves, so the first panel that I cut in half and then stamped on, that is also 65 pound weight. That's just because I didn't want to use 110 because I'm getting a lot of paper stacked up and I just didn't want to have it really, really thick and heavy. Not necessary when you're layering. This will essentially be 3 layers of cardstock if you count the card base, so No need for it to be 110 pound for each layer. And that's all done. I did use the Tombow Mono Liquid Adhesive to adhere it. I really like that right now. And then I just you could use like a ruler. This is a Cricut tool that I have, just to flatten it and press all that glue down so there's no little like glue lines that you see through the cardstock. This is another panel that I made where I just used a smaller stripe from the Plaid Play, and I didn't stamp all the way to the edge of the panel. So it makes like this really cool V. This one I'm showing you right now is I took a panel, stamped it just like I did before, and then cut the halves in half. So I had 4 strips of striped paper, and then I mixed those halves together to create 2 chevrons. You can't get the chevron colors though when you do that to match up perfectly. You'll only have 1 chevron matching up perfectly if you wanted to. I didn't want just 1 chevron matching up perfectly. So I just had 2 chevrons with mismatched colors, but the stripes do still match up. It's not like a green next to a grain. Okay, now I'm going to show you how I stamp my sentiment. I just cut a circle on a vellum with the flower circles die, and I'm using a sentiment from the Big Day stamp set. Pulling off the day. The stamp set's really cool because you can put like big girl today, big boy today, or big day today. I'm going to go real generic here and just say big day today, centering it up in that circle. And then I'm going to finish off with some hearts that are also from that Big Day stamp set. So pulling off 3 of the hearts, and I'll put them around the sentiment. While I'm positioning this, I just want to mention that I did make a card, a chevron card for the release. You may have seen it. But I did it differently than I'm showing you right now, because the way that I did it for the release, my release sample, was really tricky, and so I really wanted to play around with this technique and show you guys a better way to do these stamped chevrons. And the better way I found is cutting that panel in half and not positioning your stamp, repositioning your stamp over and over again. And again, by doing that, it's just what you saw me do, is just sliding that halved panel along the edge of my Misty, and that's how I stamped my series of stripes. I really found that to be the best way. What I did for the release is I masked off half of my panel, and I had to end up repositioning my stamp several times, so it was a lot more of a hassle than the technique that I'm showing you today. So I think this is a lot better. So what I'm doing right now is I've stamped the sentiment. I just used embossing ink, stamped it, and now I'm pouring on some white embossing powder, just doing a little cleanup with my brush where it's stuck. I did put on anti-static powder first before I stamped it, but even still, I think at least I find, the embossing powder sticks a slightly bit more to the vellum, so I did have to do a little cleanup even still with my brush. And now I'm just going to heat set this, and this sentiment is done. And I'm going to be making 3 sentiments, so that sentiment is done. The next sentiment I'm making has like 2 parts. And this is because you saw the 3 panels that I did show you, the 3 different chevron panels. I'm going to finish all those panels today at the end of the video, so you'll see all 3. So I did take the Good Luck word die, and I die cut out of 110 pound white cardstock, the Good Luck. Now I'm trimming off the luck to just have the good, and I'm just fine tuning that tail of the G just to make it look like I didn't trim off half of the sentiment to make it look like it's finished and complete. So just rounding the edges a little bit here and trimming off a bit of that tail. So that's my good. Now I am going to take a craft foam good. I cut it with the Good Luck die. It's a scrap, so I didn't get the whole luck, which is fine because I'm not keeping that part. And again, I'm trimming that tail of the G just to make it nice and rounded and finished. And now I'll put the 2 together. I'm going to use some liquid adhesive. I'll grab it here in just a second. This is the liquid adhesive. It's in a fine tip nozzle. And this allows me to just precisely get that small amounts of glue on the craft foam, and then I'll put the cardstock good right on top once I get that glue all over. So I'm taking that cardstock good now, I'm going to stick it on top, and then I'm going to align it by kind of pinching the edge of the cardstock and the craft foam with my fingers, and that'll just kind of line it all up. So I'm going around and just kind of pinching the edges right there and getting it all lined up. And that's done. So that's part of my second sentiment. The next thing I'm going to do is stamp some more of the sentiment with on some black cardstock. I'm using the Happy Day stamp set. I'm pulling off the Today Is and A Good Day. I'm going to line it up here at the bottom of my MISTI. I'm starting with, well, I meant to start with Today Is, so I'm fixing it here. I need to start with Today Is A Good Day, and I'm going to combine these two, but I will be masking off Good because I'll be using that die cut Good in its place. So I've got it all positioned here. I'm going to pick it up with my MISTI, put down some anti-static powder real quick. Oh, before I do that though, I'm putting down that, so this is just a post-it note that I've cut in half, one of those smaller ones, and that is covering up Good, because again, I'm going to use that die cut Good that I just made. Put down some anti-static powder, and now I'm going to ink up this portion of the sentiment, the whole stamp really, with the embossing ink, and then I will remove that post-it note before I stamp it. Make sure you remove that post-it note before you stamp it. And that will make sure that no ink got on the Good and that won't stamp. So I stamped it. I do it a couple times here, and I'm probably going to move that magnet, that bar magnet out of the way because it is a little thicker. Just to ensure I've got the whole sentiment inked up and stamped onto the paper cardstock. And now I'm just putting on the white embossing powder, and then I will heat set this. And I will actually trim this down to 2 separate sentiments, but it was just easier just to stamp them all at once, and then I'll trim it down. And this also ensures that the strips are the same thickness as well. So that's done. I'm not going to use my scissors. I decided not to. I'm going to trim it with my paper trimmer, and then now I'm ready to put it together. So I did trim the panels too, the stamped panels. I trimmed them down with my paper trimmer, like 1/8 of an inch on all the sides. I put tiny bits of foam tape behind the letters on that vellum circle, on my vellum sentiment. So I cut tiny bits of foam tape and put them behind like the hearts and the letters, and that just hides it so you can't see it. And that gives some dimension to the vellum sentiment. Makes it a little bit dimensional, pops it. And here's one that I did, same technique. I just used the smaller stripe from the Plaid Play Stamp Set, and I did use distressed inks on that one. But that's the only difference. Okay, and here's the one with the other sentiment that I made. So we've got the dimensional Good, what Today Is a Good Day, and that one's that the panels that I stamped and then cut in half again. So I had 4 strips and then mixed those 4 strips up to create 2 chevrons. And that's the chevron panel that I made by not stamping all the way to the edge. Just stamped like 8 stripes and then did the same 8 stripes on the other half. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I can't wait to see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.